Story number 40. It happened during my final semester at university. I had just left the campus library and was crossing a side path near the athletic center when everything changed. A car was cutting across the walkway, too fast, too aggressive. I didn't see it coming. The next thing I knew, I was on the pavement, unconscious, but in that darkness, something else began. I woke up in a world that felt as real as this one. I was living a completely different life. The air had a crispness I could feel, the smells were vivid, and she was there. She had this effortless grace about her, bright eyes, a laugh that echoed like music. I didn't know her name at first, but I couldn't take my eyes off her. I saw her often at a local bookstore, at the cafe where I began spending mornings just to feel close to her. I was captivated. For months, I tried to get her attention. We had a few awkward run-ins, some casual conversations, and eventually real dates. She told me about her dreams, her fears, and I shared mine. She made my face flush. She made my heart race. Eventually, she said yes. And one crisp autumn morning, we were married. It was a quiet wedding, just close friends and family. We moved into a cozy home on the edge of a forest trail. She baked on weekends. I built furniture in the garage. I landed a great job doing what I loved, something creative and fulfilling. And she didn't need to work unless she wanted to. Not long after she gave birth to our daughter, the way she clutched my finger for the first time, I can't even describe it. 2 years later, our son arrived. He had these big, curious eyes that always seemed to study the world like it was all brand new. Every morning, I'd tiptoe into his room before work just to watch him sleep for a moment longer. Years passed. We had traditions, Sunday walks, movie nights, bedtime stories. I can still hear the way they used to laugh together, but then something strange happened. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, half listening to the news, when I noticed something odd about the lamp beside me. It looked off, wrong, in a way I couldn't explain. The base was square, deep red with gold edges, and the shade was white. But its angles, its depth, were inverted somehow. It still looked three-dimensional, but not in a way that made sense, like it existed in a geometry not meant for human eyes. I couldn't stop staring. I tried to shake it off, but my focus locked. The next morning, I didn't go to work, I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, I just watched that lamp. My wife grew worried, gently asking if I was okay. I didn't answer, I didn't know what to say. On the third day, she packed up the kids and went to stay at her mother's house. She promised she'd come back when I was ready to talk, but she never needed to, because that night, everything fell apart. The lamp, this strange, impossible lamp, started to grow, not physically, but in my perception. It filled my vision until all I saw was red, then voices, screams, a whirl of sensations I couldn't place, and then pain. Crushing, raw, searing pain. I opened my eyes and the first thing I said was, "I'm missing teeth." I was on my back on cold pavement. My shirt was torn. There were strangers all around me, faces filled with shock and confusion. My head throbbed. My hands were trembling. A police officer helped me up and, for reasons I still don't understand, rushed me into his cruiser rather than waiting for an ambulance. I was taken to the hospital, barely understanding what was happening. Doctors told me I'd been knocked unconscious, hit by a car. I'd been out for only a few minutes, but in those minutes, I had lived a whole decade, 10 years, a full life, a wife, children, laughter, love, and now none of it was real. The grief that followed was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. For years, I lived in a fog. I mourned people who had never existed. I couldn't explain it to friends, and I didn't try. Every night I went to bed hoping, aching to dream of her again, but she never returned. Sometimes, though, I catch glimpses of my son, always in my peripheral vision, always just out of reach. He looks 5 years old. He never speaks. They say trauma can do strange things to the brain, hallucinations, fractured memories, fabricated realities. Maybe that's all it was. Maybe it wasn't. I don't have answers. I'm not sure I want them, but I carry that other life inside me every day, quietly like a ghost I don't want to disturb. Because for a moment, it was real, and sometimes that's all we have. Story number 41. I've been thinking a lot lately, not in the way people usually reflect after making a mistake or hurting someone. It's different, more detached, more clinical. I'm 20 now, and for as long as I can remember, I've understood people in a way that feels almost unfair. I can tell when someone's lying. I can sense when they're anxious or unsure. I see what makes them feel safe and what breaks their confidence, and I've used that knowledge over and over again, not because I had to, not even because I wanted something specific. I just did it because I could. When someone is vulnerable, I don't feel the urge to protect them. I see an opening. One time, a friend of mine was going through something really painful. She called me late at night, crying so hard she could barely speak. I went to see her right away, but not because I cared. I went because I knew she would trust me more deeply if I was there in that moment. And I was right. Like, after that night, she became emotionally tied to me in a way she never had before. People around me think I'm incredibly empathetic. They think I care more than most. I give them advice. I comfort them. I say all the right things. But the truth is, I don't feel any of it. I study their behavior like a scientist observing a pattern. I know what to say because I understand what they want to hear, not because I feel it myself. In school, I had a friend who started becoming more popular. She was funny and kind, and everyone wanted to be around her. I didn't like that. So I quietly started to change how others saw her, not directly. I made small comments, planted quiet doubts. Over time, she became more isolated, and while she lost her friends, she turned to me for support. I watched her fall apart. I didn't comfort her out of love. I did it because it kept me in control. I still don't feel bad about it. I once dated someone who was deeply in love with me. From the beginning, I was in charge of how the relationship moved. I made him feel secure. I also made sure he depended on me emotionally. When I got bored, I ended it. He was devastated. He hasn't recovered since. I know this because mutual friends still mention it. But I felt almost nothing. I missed having a place where I could say what I wanted without pretending. That lasted a few days, and after that I moved on. There was a death in my extended family not long ago. A cousin, she was young, it was sudden. Everyone around me was overwhelmed with grief. Her parents couldn't stop crying. People kept asking each other why something like this would happen. I stayed quiet. I didn't feel anything, not sadness, not sympathy, not even shock. I understood the loss in my head, but I didn't feel it in my chest. Sometimes I wonder what that means. If there's something wrong with me, if I'm broken in some way, but even that thought doesn't lead to guilt. I don't feel ashamed. I don't feel remorse. I just notice that I don't feel. What does scare me is how easily I can pretend. I can make people believe I'm the safest person in their lives. I know what to say. I know when to look concerned. I know how to hold someone's hand while they cry. And they never realize that I'm completely disconnected inside. I'm not telling this to ask for help. I'm not looking for redemption. I think I just needed to admit it out loud, not to anyone in particular, just to myself, because even though I don't feel what others feel, I know enough to understand that something about me doesn't work the way it should, and yet I continue because no one ever sees it. Story number 42. Am I wrong for insisting my daughter keep her bedroom locked until our house guests move out? Over the past year, things have been a bit chaotic at home. My wife's brother Alan went through a rough divorce and ended up without a place to stay. A few months back, we offered him and his teenage daughters, Mia and Lily, both 18, a temporary place to stay while he got back on his feet. My wife and I have a 16-year-old daughter named Emma. She's quiet, focused on school, and generally keeps to herself. She gets along with her cousins, but they've never been especially close. The problem started not long after they moved in. Emma began noticing her things were going missing: clothes, skincare products, tech accessories. It wasn't long before she realized her cousins were going into her room and helping themselves to whatever they wanted. I spoke to them and asked them to respect Emma's space. But Alan brushed it off as normal teenage behavior. My wife agreed and said it's just girls being girls. I didn't see it that way. Borrowing is one thing, taking without asking is another. The final straw came when Emma bought herself a professional-grade art supply kit. She had saved up her allowance and babysitting money for over a month. It was something she was really proud of. A few days after she bought it, she found it on her bed, completely ruined, colors mixed up, brushes damaged. One of her cousins had taken it without asking and used it carelessly. Emma was devastated. She came to me in tears. That same day, I installed a lock on her bedroom door. When Alan and the girls found out, they were furious. The girls felt excluded, and Alan accused me of treating his daughters like criminals. He said Emma was overreacting and called her behavior immature, claiming that sharing between girls is normal and healthy. He even said Emma shouldn't have spent so much on something so unnecessary and grown up in the first place. My wife tried to play mediator, but ultimately sided with her brother. She told me I was creating division in the house and making her nieces feel unwelcome. She insisted I remove the lock to avoid hurt feelings and show we see them as family. I refused. I told her clearly, the lock stays. It's not negotiable while Alan and his daughters are living under our roof. She got upset and said I was being hostile toward her family and making her choose sides. She warned that her relatives would see me as the bad guy. I reminded her that no one else in her family was willing to take Alan and the girls in when they were struggling. We opened our home to them. The least they can do is show some basic respect in return. Now the house is tense. Alan barely speaks to me, and the girls ignore Emma completely. My wife is cold and distant, but I can't bring myself to feel guilty. My daughter deserves to feel safe and respected in her own space, even if that means upsetting some extended family members. So, am I really in the wrong for putting my daughter's boundaries first? Story number 43, choosing not to become a parent has been the most painful decision of my life. My partner and I live with schizophrenia. It's managed. We both adhere to our treatment plans. And for the most part, we live stable, fulfilling lives. But after many long, quiet conversations and countless moments of reflection, we've made the decision not to have children. It wasn't easy. It still isn't. There's a very real genetic risk involved. And beyond that, the environmental challenges a child might face growing up with parents who have a serious mental illness. We worry deeply about the possibility of our child inheriting this condition. We know what it feels like to live inside this illness, to wake up scared of your own thoughts. That fear, the first time you realize something is wrong, the isolation, the confusion, I would never, ever want to pass that down. Even in the best case scenario where everything goes smoothly, there are the long-term health impacts of our medication, damage to our hearts, our livers, the risk of shortened lifespans. I think about the potential of relapsing and how devastating it would be for a child to witness that, worse to be burdened by it. I couldn't bear the idea of becoming someone they'd need to care for instead of the other way around. I grieve this loss every day. I've always dreamed of being a parent, of holding a baby, of watching them grow. That dream hasn't disappeared. It just had to be shelved for a future I can't, in good conscience, create. I still cry sometimes when I think about it, but for me, love means protecting someone even before they exist. And in this case, that means not bringing them into a world where I can't promise them safety, health, or the stability every child deserves. Story number 44, title, I witnessed something years ago that still haunts me today. Years back, a friend and I went over to a girl's house we both knew. There was drinking, music, the usual atmosphere of a late-night hangout. I was interested in the girl hosting, and it seemed like things were moving in that direction between us. At some point, my friend asked if she had someone she could invite for him, and she said yes, she had a friend who was free. Eventually, this other woman showed up. From the moment she walked in, it was clear she wasn't my friend's type. But he stayed polite, kept drinking, made some conversation, and eventually went off to one of the rooms and passed out from the alcohol. Meanwhile, things between me and the host were getting more private. Just before we went to another room, I caught a glance of something that didn't sit right, but at the time, I didn't fully register what I was seeing. The other woman had gone into the room where my friend was passed out. She began to touch him, pulling his clothes down, trying to arouse him despite him being clearly unconscious. I saw flashes of it, foggy through the haze of my own drunkenness. What she did that night was assault him. She took advantage of someone who was in no state to give consent, someone who didn't even know what was happening. At the time, I was too intoxicated and too focused on my own situation to grasp the seriousness of what I'd witnessed. I didn't stop her. I didn't process what was really going on. I was young, careless, and completely in the wrong for standing by. It wasn't until years later that the weight of it truly hit me. It wasn't some awkward night or something to laugh about later. It was a violation. And it changed how I see everything, especially how society talks about consent, power, and the way male victims are ignored or dismissed. We partied plenty after that night, but I never let anything like that happen again. I grew up. And the shame of what I let slide hasn't left me. To this day, I regret not stepping in. I wish I had understood then what I understand now, that no matter the gender, assault is assault and silence makes you complicit.